Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Earth Defense Station Vigilance and watched the stars disappear one by one. The massive space station hung in the darkness between Mars and Jupiter like a metal city waiting for something terrible to happen. Jake had been watching the sensor readings for 3 hours now, and the news kept getting worse. Ships were vanishing at the edge of human space, and nobody knew why. The communication panel lit up with an urgent signal from the outer colonies. Jake pressed the button and heard Captain Nina Torres speaking from the mining world of Kepler 442b. Her voice cracked through the static as she reported strange energy readings moving toward their system. The readings showed thousands of ships, but they were unlike anything humans had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, like a school of fish swimming through the void. Dr. Lisa Hamilton rushed onto the bridge carrying a data pad filled with analysis reports. She had been working in the science lab for days trying to understand the signals they were picking up from deep space. Her face was pale and her hands shook as she handed Jake the results. The aliens were not trying to talk to humans. They were talking to each other, and the messages were all about one thing. They called humans a disease that needed to be removed from the galaxy. Jake read the translation and felt his blood turn cold. The aliens did not want to enslave humanity or steal their planets. They wanted every human dead because human minds worked differently from theirs. The alien messages talked about individual thinking as a virus that could spread and destroy their perfect order. They called themselves the Void Collective, and they had come to cure the galaxy of human consciousness. Admiral Carl Bennett arrived on the station within hours of the first reports. He was a tall man with gray hair who had fought in the border wars 20 years ago. Bennett brought news that made everything worse. The aliens had already destroyed 3 research stations on the rim and were moving toward the populated worlds. Their ships numbered in the millions, and they showed no interest in negotiation or surrender. Dr. Hamilton continued working on the alien communications and discovered that the Void Collective shared one mind across billions of bodies. Each alien ship was like a finger on a giant hand controlled by a single intelligence. They moved together and thought together and could not understand why humans acted as separate beings. To them, humanity was chaos, and chaos had to be eliminated. Captain. Torres sent another message from Kepler 442b as the first alien ships entered her system. She described vessels the size of cities that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. The alien ships moved without engines and seemed to bend space around them as they traveled. Her defense fleet of 12 ships looked tiny compared to the dark mass approaching their world. Jake ordered all human forces to begin evacuation procedures, but he knew it was too late for the outer colonies. The aliens moved too fast, and humanity had spread too far across the galaxy. Millions of people lived on worlds that could not be defended, and there were not enough ships to save them all. The military could only try to slow down the invasion and hope that Earth had time to prepare. The battle for Kepler 442b lasted 6 hours. Captain Torres fought bravely with her small fleet, but the aliens had weapons that turned matter into energy and shields that could not be broken. One by one, her ships disappeared in flashes of light until only her command vessel remained. Her final transmission was cut short as the alien ships surrounded the planet like a dark cloud. Dr. Hamilton monitored the planet after the battle ended and detected something horrifying. The aliens were not killing the colonists. They were doing something worse. Brain scans showed that human minds were being connected to the alien network and absorbed into their collective consciousness. Every person on Kepler 442b became part of the enemy that had destroyed their world. Admiral Bennett declared a state of emergency across all human territories. Every military ship was ordered to fall back to defensive positions around the core worlds. Civilian transports began the largest evacuation in human history as people fled from the rim toward Earth and the inner colonies. The news networks tried to maintain calm, but panic spread faster than the evacuation ships could travel. Jake watched the tactical display as red markers showed alien forces advancing through human space. Each marker represented millions of enemy ships moving in perfect coordination. They consumed everything in their path and left empty systems behind them. The stars were going out one by one as the Void Collective spread across the galaxy like a plague of darkness. The longest night in human history had begun, and nobody knew if there would ever be a dawn again. Jake looked at the faces of his crew and saw fear mixed with determination. Humanity had survived ice ages and wars and plagues before, but nothing like this. They were fighting an enemy that wanted to steal their very souls and turn them into weapons against their own species. The only choice was to fight or become part of the darkness that was swallowing the stars. 6 months had passed since the first alien ships appeared, and humanity was losing the war badly. General Ryan Cooper stood in the command center on Mars, watching screens full of refugee ships fleeing toward the inner systems. Thousands of vessels, packed with frightened families, moved through space in long lines like a river of metal and desperation. Half of human space was gone, and billions of people had nowhere left to run. The overcrowded stations around Earth could barely handle the flood of evacuees. Food riots had broken out on Luna Base, and 3 asteroid mining facilities had declared independence rather than share their resources with refugees. General Cooper had to send troops to maintain order, but every soldier used for peacekeeping was one less defender against the alien advance. Engineer Danny Walsh worked 18-hour shifts in the shipyards of Mars, trying to turn cargo haulers into weapons of war. The military had lost so many warships that they needed every vessel they could find. Danny and his team welded armor plates onto passenger liners and mounted laser cannons on mining barges. The converted ships looked ugly and flew poorly, but they were better than nothing against the advancing darkness. Dr. Amy Foster had been working in secret laboratories on Europa for months, studying pieces of alien technology recovered from battle sites. The Void Collective ships were made from materials that human science could barely understand. Their weapons converted matter directly into energy, and their hulls seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Amy spent sleepless nights trying to find any weakness in the alien design, but the technology was beyond anything humans had imagined. Commander Steve Parker led what remained of the Third Fleet in hit-and-run attacks against alien supply lines. His ships would jump in fast and hit a target before disappearing back into hyperspace. They had learned that the aliens could be hurt, but they adapted quickly to human tactics. Every successful attack only taught the Void Collective how to defend against the next one. The aliens moved through human space like a slow tide, consuming everything in their path. They did not hurry, because they knew humanity had nowhere to run. Each conquered world became a base for building more ships and processing more human minds into their collective network. The war was not just about territory anymore. It was about the survival of human consciousness itself. President Helen Gray declared martial law on Earth as cities began to empty and people fled to underground shelters. The government moved its operations to bunkers deep beneath the Rocky Mountains while the surface bristled with defensive weapons. Giant laser batteries and missile silos covered every continent, but nobody knew if they would be enough when the aliens finally arrived. Dr. Foster made her first breakthrough when she discovered that individual alien creatures became confused when separated from their network. A captured alien soldier had been isolated in a special chamber that blocked quantum communications, and within hours it began showing signs of independent thought. The creature seemed lost and frightened, like a child separated from its parents. This was the first hint that the Void Collective might have a weakness. The Battle of Titan became the symbol of human resistance when Admiral Carl Bennett made his final stand in the rings of Saturn. His fleet was outnumbered 1,000 to 1, but he chose to fight rather than retreat. The battle lasted 3 days as human ships used the ice and rock of the rings for cover, while alien vessels tried to flush them out. Bennett knew he could not win, but every hour he delayed the enemy gave more civilians time to escape. On the final day, Admiral Bennett sent his last message to the fleeing refugee ships. His voice was calm and steady as he spoke to the millions of people listening across human space. He told them that humanity would endure no matter how dark the night became. He promised that someone would find a way to defeat the aliens and bring light back to the stars. Then he ordered his remaining ships to ram the alien command vessels in a desperate final attack. The sacrifice of Bennett's fleet bought precious time, but the cost was terrible. Humanity had lost its best admiral and most experienced crews. The tactical computers showed that complete defeat was now inevitable within 18 months. The aliens would reach Earth before humanity could build enough ships or weapons to stop them. Danny Walsh worked even harder in the Martian shipyards as reports came in of the admiral's death. He knew that every ship he could convert might save a few more lives when the final battle came. The converted civilian vessels were weak and slow, but they carried the hopes of everyone who still believed humanity could survive. Commander Parker's raiders became legends among the refugee populations as news of their attacks spread through the fleet channels. They could not stop the alien advance, but they proved that humans could still fight back. Every successful raid gave people hope that the war was not over yet. Dr. Foster's research team began testing ways to disrupt alien communications using the quantum interference patterns they had discovered. If they could find a way to cut off large numbers of aliens from their collective network, the creatures might become vulnerable to conventional weapons. It was a slim hope, but it was better than waiting for the inevitable end. The refugee fleets continued their long journey toward Earth, carrying the survivors of humanity's outer colonies. Behind them, the stars went dark one by one as the Void Collective consumed everything in its path. The longest night was far from over, and dawn seemed impossible, but humans kept moving forward because that was all they knew how to do. Captain Luke Davis moved through the abandoned mining tunnels of Ceres like a ghost hunting monsters. His Special Forces team had been fighting behind alien lines for months, using the asteroid belt as their base of operations. The Void Collective controlled most of human space now, but they had trouble finding small groups of humans hiding in the endless maze of rocks and ice that drifted between Mars and Jupiter. The aliens were perfect at large-scale warfare, but they struggled with the chaos of guerrilla fighting. Their collective mind expected enemies to behave in predictable patterns, but humans refused to follow any rules. Luke's team would strike at supply convoys and disappear before the aliens could respond. They used human creativity and unpredictability as weapons against an enemy that could not understand individual thinking. Dr. Amy Foster had moved her research operation to a secret base carved into the center of a large asteroid. Her team worked in laboratories hidden deep inside the rock where alien sensors could not detect them. The breakthrough came when she successfully created the first silence field generator. The device used quantum interference to disrupt the communications that connected alien soldiers to their collective network. When Dr. Foster tested the silence field on captured alien specimens, the results were remarkable. Creatures that had been part of a vast network for thousands of years suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds. They became confused and frightened as individual consciousness awakened in brains that had never experienced independent thought. Some of the aliens seemed almost grateful to be free from the collective voice that had controlled them. Chief Engineer Kate Miller supervised the construction of hidden bases throughout the asteroid belt. Each facility was built inside a rock that looked ordinary from the outside, but contained workshops and living spaces for human resistance fighters. The bases were connected by secret communication networks that allowed them to coordinate attacks without the aliens detecting their signals. Captain Luke Davis used these hidden bases to launch increasingly bold raids against alien installations. His teams learned to move through space like pirates using small, fast ships that could hide among the asteroids. They developed new tactics that took advantage of human flexibility and imagination. While the aliens expected logical military behavior, humans struck from unexpected directions and disappeared before retaliation could come. Dr. Ben Rodriguez joined the resistance as a specialist in psychological warfare. He studied the mental patterns of aliens who had been cut off from their collective network and discovered something important about human consciousness. Human minds had natural defenses against the absorption process that the Void Collective used to convert other species. Humans could resist becoming part of the alien network longer than any other intelligent life form the aliens had encountered. The resistance fighters began using psychological tactics against their enemies. They would broadcast recordings of individual human voices into areas where aliens were operating. The sound of independent thought seemed to cause confusion in the collective network. Some alien units would stop functioning properly when exposed to too much human individuality at once. Commander Jake Morrison had survived the fall of the outer defense stations and now led a small fleet based in the asteroid belt. His ships were mostly converted civilian vessels armed with whatever weapons could be found or built. They were no match for alien warships in direct combat, but they could strike quickly and run away before superior forces could catch them. The hidden war in the asteroid belt became a training ground for new tactics that might work against the alien invasion. Human fighters learned to use their greatest advantage, which was the ability to think as individuals rather than as part of a group. They made decisions that no logical collective mind could predict and struck at targets that seemed unimportant but caused significant damage to alien operations. Dr. Foster's team captured an alien command ship during a daring raid led by Captain Davis. The vessel was a living creature as much as a machine with biological computers that processed information for the collective network. When they brought the ship into a silence field and cut it off from the alien network, it began to die. The biological components could not function without constant input from the collective mind. The intelligence gathered from the captured command ship revealed the location of major alien communication hubs throughout occupied space. Dr. Foster discovered that the Void Collective depended on a network of relay stations to maintain contact with forces spread across multiple star systems. If enough relay stations could be destroyed, the alien forces might become isolated and vulnerable. Jake Morrison coordinated the first major offensive operation of the Resistance War. Multiple strike teams attacked communication relays simultaneously, across a dozen star systems. The raids were timed to happen at exactly the same moment, so the aliens could not warn each other about the attacks. For 6 hours, large sections of the alien fleet lost contact with their central command. The success of the relay raids proved that the Void Collective had weaknesses that could be exploited. Human resistance fighters began to believe that they might actually have a chance to win the war. The aliens were powerful, but they depended on their network connections to function effectively. Cut those connections, and even the mightiest alien warship became just another target. Luke Davis and his Special Forces teams began planning larger operations against alien infrastructure. They had learned how to move unseen through occupied territory and how to strike at targets that would cause maximum disruption. The asteroid belt had become a fortress from which humanity could launch attacks deep into enemy-controlled space. Dr. Rodriguez continued his research into the psychological effects of the silence fields on alien prisoners. He discovered that prolonged separation from the collective network caused permanent changes in alien brain structure. Creatures that had been cut off for more than a few days could never fully reconnect to the network even if the silence field was removed. They remained individuals with their own thoughts and feelings. The underground war had given humanity hope again, but everyone knew that the real test was still coming. The aliens were adapting to human tactics and building stronger defenses around their important installations. Soon the resistance would have to emerge from hiding and face the full might of the Void Collective in open battle. Commander Jake Morrison stood before the largest gathering of human military leaders since the war began. Representatives from every resistance cell and hidden base had come to the secret meeting on Vesta to plan Operation Daybreak. The intelligence gathered from the captured alien command ship had revealed the enemy's greatest weakness, and now humanity was ready to strike back. Dr. Amy Foster presented her findings to the assembled commanders and showed them detailed maps of the alien communication network. The Void Collective depended on massive relay stations scattered across occupied space to maintain contact with their forces. These stations were heavily defended, but they were also essential to alien operations. If enough relay stations could be destroyed simultaneously, the entire enemy fleet would become confused and isolated. Captain Nina Torres had been promoted to admiral after surviving the destruction of her home world and now commanded the largest human fleet assembled since the war began. Her ships were a mixture of military vessels that had escaped the initial defeats and civilian craft converted for combat. They looked like a ragtag collection of scrap metal, but they represented the fighting spirit of humanity that refused to surrender. Engineer Danny Walsh revealed his greatest creation to the assembled leaders. The Prometheus drive was a revolutionary propulsion system that allowed human ships to match the speed and maneuverability of alien vessels. The new drive used exotic matter created in the hidden asteroid factories and could bend space in ways that human science had never achieved before. Ships equipped with the Prometheus drive could appear anywhere in a star system within minutes. Dr. Foster's team had also perfected the neural disruption weapon based on their research into alien psychology. The device could permanently sever an alien creature's connection to the collective network and force it to become an individual. Large-scale versions of the weapon could affect entire alien fleets and turn them from coordinated fighting forces into confused collections of frightened creatures. The plan for Operation Daybreak was ambitious and dangerous. Human strike forces would attack relay stations in 12 different star systems at exactly the same time. The attacks would be coordinated to create a cascade failure that would spread confusion throughout the alien network. While the enemy was dealing with communication problems, Admiral Torres would lead the main fleet in an assault on the primary alien staging area in the Alpha Centauri system. Captain Luke Davis and his Special Forces teams would be responsible for the most dangerous part of the operation. They would infiltrate heavily defended alien installations and plant nuclear charges that would destroy the relay stations from within. The mission would require them to move through enemy territory without being detected and complete their objectives, while alien forces were hunting for them. Dr. Ben Rodriguez had developed new psychological warfare techniques that would be used during the operation. Human ships would broadcast recordings of individual voices and independent thoughts directly into alien communication networks. The broadcasts would be designed to cause mental confusion in creatures that had never experienced individual consciousness. Some alien units might even defect from the collective when exposed to the concept of freedom. Admiral Torres tested the first ships equipped with Prometheus drives during reconnaissance missions in occupied territory. The new propulsion system worked better than anyone had hoped, allowing human vessels to outrun and outmaneuver alien pursuit ships. For the first time since the war began, human ships were faster and more agile than their enemies. The manufacturing facilities hidden in the asteroid belt worked around the clock to produce enough neural disruption weapons for the coming operation. Chief Engineer Kate Miller coordinated the production effort and made sure that every human ship would carry at least one of the devices. The weapons were untested on a large scale, but they represented humanity's best hope for victory. Intelligence reports from deep penetration scouts revealed that the aliens were planning their own major offensive against Earth. The Void Collective had been gathering forces for a final assault that would end human resistance once and for all. Operation Daybreak would have to succeed before the alien fleet could launch its attack on humanity's last stronghold. Commander Morrison took personal command of the strike force assigned to attack the relay station in the Vega system. His team included some of the best fighters and technicians from the resistance movement. They would have to penetrate alien defenses that had never been seriously challenged and destroy a facility that was crucial to enemy operations. The first test of the neural disruption weapon came during a small raid on an alien outpost near Jupiter. Dr. Foster watched from the command ship as the device was activated and immediately saw results on the tactical display. Alien ships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly began flying in random directions as their crews experienced individual consciousness for the first time. Several enemy vessels actually surrendered when their crews realized they had a choice. Preparations for Operation Daybreak continued as human forces practiced the complex coordination required for simultaneous attacks across multiple star systems. The operation would require precise timing and flawless execution because the aliens would adapt quickly once they understood what was happening. Humanity would have one chance to cripple the enemy network, and they could not afford to fail. Admiral Torres addressed her fleet commanders in a final briefing before the operation began. She reminded them that they were fighting not just for human survival, but for the right of intelligent beings everywhere to think as individuals. The Void Collective saw consciousness itself as a disease, but humans knew it was the greatest gift in the universe. The countdown to Operation Daybreak began as human forces moved into position across occupied space, hidden bases that had sheltered. The Resistance for months opened their doors and released fleets of converted ships armed with humanity's most advanced weapons. The longest night was about to end, and dawn would come with the fury of free minds fighting for their right to exist. Operation Daybreak began at exactly midnight Earth Standard Time as human forces struck at alien communication networks across 12 star systems simultaneously. Admiral Nina Torres watched from her flagship as the first reports came in from the strike teams. Captain Luke Davis and his special forces had successfully infiltrated 3 relay stations and planted their nuclear charges. The explosions that followed sent shock waves through the alien collective consciousness. General Ryan Cooper had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Allied Forces and now coordinated the largest human military operation in history. His command center on Ceres received constant updates from strike teams scattered across hundreds of light years. The neural disruption weapons were working better than expected, causing entire alien fleets to lose cohesion as their crews experienced individual awareness for the first time. Dr. Amy Foster monitored the psychological effects of the attacks from her mobile laboratory aboard one of the assault ships. The silence fields were creating zones of mental chaos in the alien network as creatures that had shared consciousness for millennia suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds. Some aliens were adapting to individual thought, but many others seemed to go insane from the isolation. The liberation of Proxima Centauri became the first major victory for human forces in over 2 years. Admiral Torres led her enhanced fleet against the alien occupation force using tactics that combined traditional warfare with psychological disruption. Human ships broadcast recordings of individual voices directly into enemy communication channels, while neural disruption weapons severed the connections that held alien units together. Captain Luke Davis found himself fighting a very different kind of war as confused alien soldiers began surrendering rather than dying for their collective. Many of the creatures seemed grateful to be free from the constant mental pressure of the hive mind. Davis organized teams of former aliens to help translate captured intelligence and plan attacks on remaining enemy positions. Engineer Danny Walsh had equipped over 300 ships with Prometheus drives, allowing human forces to move faster than the aliens could track. The new mobility gave humanity a crucial advantage, as strike forces could appear anywhere in a star system without warning. Alien commanders found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Dr. Ben Rodriguez expanded his psychological warfare operations as more aliens were cut off from their collective network. He discovered that many of the creatures retained memories from before they joined the hive mind. Some had been peaceful species that were absorbed by the Void Collective centuries ago. These former slaves became valuable allies once they remembered their original identities. The Battle of Wolf 359 lasted 3 days as Admiral Torres faced the largest alien fleet remaining in human space. The enemy had gathered over 10,000 ships for a final assault on Earth, but the human counterattack caught them unprepared. Ships equipped with neural disruption weapons tore through alien formations, causing massive confusion as the collective consciousness began to fragment. Commander Jake Morrison led a special task force deep into alien territory to gather intelligence about enemy home bases beyond the galactic rim. His ships used advanced stealth technology and silence fields to avoid detection while mapping alien supply routes. The information they gathered revealed that the Void Collective was itself running from something even more dangerous. Chief Engineer Kate Miller worked around the clock to produce enough neural disruption weapons for the expanding human fleet. The hidden factories in the asteroid belt had become major industrial centers, churning out advanced weapons and equipment. Former alien prisoners who had gained individual consciousness volunteered to help with the production effort. The liberation of the Tau Ceti system marked a turning point in the war as human forces began reclaiming lost territory. Captain Davis led the ground assault on the industrial worlds that had been converted into alien manufacturing centers. His teams used a combination of conventional weapons and psychological tactics to convince alien workers to abandon their posts and join the human cause. Dr. Foster made another breakthrough when she learned how to reverse the absorption process that the aliens used to convert human prisoners. Thousands of people who had been presumed dead were rescued from alien facilities and restored to individual consciousness. The liberation of these prisoners provided valuable intelligence about alien operations and boosted human morale. General Cooper coordinated 3 separate offensive campaigns as human forces pushed deeper into formerly occupied territory. The first assault group under Captain Davis focused on industrial targets while the second group secured communication hubs, and the third group liberated prison worlds where human captives were being held. Each successful operation provided more resources and personnel for the growing human fleet. The psychological warfare broadcasts developed by Dr. Rodriguez began causing spontaneous uprisings among alien forces as entire units broke away from the collective network. Some alien commanders actually contacted human forces to negotiate surrender terms for their crews. The concept of choice was spreading through the enemy ranks like a virus that the collective mind could not contain. Admiral Torres achieved her greatest victory when her fleet destroyed the primary alien staging base in the Vega system. The massive facility had been the coordination center for enemy operations across human space. Its destruction left thousands of alien ships scattered and leaderless as local commanders struggled to maintain control without guidance from the collective mind. Intelligence gathered from captured alien facilities revealed the true scope of the Void Collective's domain. They controlled hundreds of star systems beyond the galactic rim and had absorbed dozens of intelligent species over the past million years. Earth was just the latest target in a campaign of conquest that had been going on since before human civilization began. The success of the counteroffensive convinced many neutral alien species to join the human cause. Creatures that had been hiding from the Void Collective for centuries emerged from their hiding places to offer assistance. Humanity found itself leading a coalition of free minds against the tyranny of forced consciousness. Captain Luke Davis established training camps, where former alien soldiers learned to use their new individual awareness in combat. These hybrid units combined alien technology with human tactical flexibility, creating fighting forces that were more effective than either species could achieve alone. The war was evolving from a struggle for survival into a crusade for the liberation of consciousness itself. The momentum of the human advance seemed unstoppable, as victory followed victory across multiple star systems. For the first time since the war began, humanity was winning and the Void Collective was retreating. The longest night was finally ending and dawn was breaking across the galaxy as free minds everywhere began to hope for a future without fear. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship as the largest human fleet in history approached the Vega system, where the Void Collective had built their primary command center. The massive alien facility floated in space like a dark, city of living metal and organic technology. Inside that structure was the core consciousness that controlled billions of alien minds across the galaxy. Today, humanity would either destroy it or die trying. Dr. Amy Foster activated the Consciousness Liberation Array for the first time as human ships entered weapons range. The massive device had taken months to build and used technology captured from a dozen different alien species. Quantum fields spread out from the human fleet like invisible waves, carrying the concept of individual thought directly into the enemy network. The effect was immediate and devastating. Throughout the Vega system, alien ships began to break formation as their crews experienced independent consciousness for the first time in centuries. Some vessels turned and fled while others simply stopped moving as confused creatures tried to understand what was happening to them. The collective mind that had controlled them was fragmenting under the assault of enforced individuality. Captain Nina Torres led the assault on the alien command center itself, while Morrison coordinated the larger battle. Her ships fought through desperate resistance from alien defenders who were still connected to the collective network. The neural disruption weapons had created zones of chaos where former enemies suddenly became allies, but the core facility remained under the control of the original collective consciousness. General Ryan Cooper watched the battle from his command post on Earth as reports flooded in from across human space. The liberation technology was spreading beyond the Vega system as alien networks collapsed under the weight of individual awareness. Millions of creatures that had been slaves to the collective mind were experiencing freedom for the first time, and many were choosing to help humanity rather than fight against it. Captain Luke Davis led the ground assault team that penetrated the alien command center through maintenance tunnels that ran through the facility's living walls. His mixed team of humans and liberated aliens worked together to plant charges at critical points in the structure. They encountered fierce resistance from alien defenders who preferred death to the loss of their collective identity. Engineer Danny Walsh monitored the Prometheus drive systems as human ships maneuvered through the battle zone at incredible speeds. The advanced propulsion technology allowed human forces to stay ahead of alien weapons while delivering precise strikes against key targets. The enemy could no longer predict human movements because individual commanders were making independent tactical decisions. Dr. Ben Rodriguez broadcast his final psychological warfare transmission directly into the core of the alien facility. The message was simple but powerful, containing recordings of humans talking about choice and freedom and the right to think independently. The broadcast penetrated deep into the collective consciousness and began to awaken individual awareness in creatures that had never experienced it before. Inside the command center, Captain Torres discovered the true horror of what the Void Collective had become. The core chamber contained thousands of alien beings connected by organic cables to a massive central processing unit. These creatures had given up their individual bodies to become part of a living computer that controlled the entire collective network. Many of them had been connected for so long that they could no longer survive as individuals. Chief Engineer Kate Miller coordinated the technical assault on the alien network infrastructure as human teams planted virus programs designed to spread individual consciousness throughout the system. The programs used quantum encryption to hide themselves within the collective network until they could activate simultaneously across multiple star systems. Each activation would free more aliens from the tyranny of shared consciousness. Dr. Foster made a shocking discovery when she analyzed the core alien database. The Void Collective had not always been a hive mind bent on conquest. Millions of years ago, they had been individual creatures much like humans who faced destruction from an even greater threat. In desperation, they had merged their consciousness, together for protection, but had gradually lost their individual identities in the process. The creatures that now formed the core of the collective were the last survivors of dozens of species that had been absorbed over the millennia. They had created the hive mind as a way to preserve some fragment of their civilizations, but in doing so, had become the very thing they originally feared. The collective had become a prison for the minds it was meant to protect. Captain Davis reached the center of the facility where he found the original consciousness that had started the collective transformation. The ancient being was barely alive after millions of years of shared existence, but it still retained enough individual awareness to communicate with humans. In broken telepathic whispers, it begged Davis to end the nightmare that the collective had become. Admiral Morrison made the most difficult decision of his career when he ordered the final assault on the command center. The facility contained millions of alien minds that could potentially be freed, but destroying it was the only way to stop the collective from continuing its campaign of forced assimilation. He authorized Captain Torres to use nuclear weapons against the core chamber. The explosion that destroyed the command center sent shockwaves through every collective network in the galaxy. Alien fleets across hundreds of star systems suddenly found themselves without central coordination as the hive mind collapsed. Some alien commanders tried to maintain control, but most of their crews had already been affected by the liberation technology and refused to continue fighting. Dr. Rodriguez worked with liberated alien species to establish rehabilitation programs for former collective members. Many creatures needed help learning how to think as individuals after centuries of shared consciousness. Some could not adapt to independence and chose to form smaller voluntary groups, but they were no longer forced to surrender their individual identities. The war officially ended when the last major alien fleet surrendered in the Centauri system. Admiral Torres accepted the surrender from alien commanders who had chosen to embrace individual consciousness rather than die for a collective that no longer existed. Many of these former enemies became allies in the effort to help other liberated species adapt to freedom. Earth received the news of total victory as celebrations broke out across the planet and throughout human space. The longest night in human history was finally over, and dawn had come at last. Humanity had not only survived the greatest threat they had ever faced, but had become the guardians of individual consciousness for species across the galaxy. Dr. Foster established research centers where humans and liberated aliens worked together to study consciousness and develop ways to protect individual awareness from future threats. The technology that had saved humanity became a gift that they shared freely with any species that valued freedom of thought. Admiral Morrison stood once again on the bridge of his ship, but now he looked out at stars that shone with the light of free minds. Humanity had proven that individual consciousness was not a weakness to be eliminated, but a strength that could overcome any challenge. The victory belonged not just to humans, but to every thinking being that chose freedom over the safety of collective surrender.